Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear students, you're welcome back to the e-learning portal of Citywide Model College, Ibadan. This is SS3 Economics Week 4 Lesson 1 presented by Adirogba. And we shall be looking at the nature and structure of the Nigerian economy. Let's take an overview of the Nigerian economy. Nigeria is a mixed economy, that is, both private and public sector exist side by side. It is a middle income economy and it is emerging, it is coming up, it is growing, it is developing. With an approximately 202 million people, the estimate of the population size is about 202 million. One of the largest populations of youth in the world, that is, the population of Nigeria has a large percentage of youths. Nigeria economy ranks 27th largest in the world. Nigeria economy is the 27th largest economy in the world, and it is the largest economy in Africa in terms of nominal gross domestic product. I hope you remember what nominal gross domestic product is. And 42nd largest in terms of purchasing power parity. That is, when purchasing power parity, which is an instrument used to measure the standard of living, is used. That particular instrument takes cognizance of the purchasing power of the country's currency. So of all the companies that will be, the countries that will be compared, they take into consideration their purchasing power. So it's also an instrument that can be used to compare the economies of different countries, just as the nominal GDP is used. So when the nominal GDP is used, Nigeria ranks 27th largest economy in the world. It occupies the 138th rank in gross domestic product per capita. I hope you remember what gross domestic product per capita is. You have to go back to your notebook on national income. Your gross domestic product per capita is dividing your gross domestic product by the population of the country. Nigeria is one of the world's largest deposits of coal, oil and gas. That is, Nigeria has a large deposit of coal, oil and gas. It is endowed with other mineral resources like limestone, iron ore, lead, zinc, tin ore, gold, columbite, and so on. It is also blessed with a vast agricultural land, about 40% of which are arable. That is, Nigeria has a large area of land, and 40% of that land is arable. That is, it can be used for agriculture. The Nigerian economy is emerging, as I've said earlier, with rapidly growing contributions from our telecommunication, banking, and film industry. So these three industries, the telecommunication, the banking, and the film industry, are growing rapidly, and they are contributing so meaningfully rather, to the gross domestic product of the country. Nigeria has a labor force of 90,471,000 as at third quarter of 2008. By third quarter, I mean you divide the year into 4 parts. The first 3 months is the first quarter, the second 3 months is the second quarter. So at the third quarter of 2008, the labor force stood at 90,471,000. That is the total number of people that make up the working population, with an unemployment rate of 23.1%. So as at third quarter of 2018, the unemployment rate stood at 23.1%. Nigeria is the third biggest country in West Africa and the 32nd largest in the world in terms of land area. That is, when you look at the land size, how big Nigeria is, it is the 32nd largest in the world and the third in West Africa. Nigeria is well connected to international trade routes. That is, it's able to link other countries, and that has assisted it in terms of its trade with other countries. So let's take a look at the macroeconomic performance of Nigeria, how Nigeria has been performing, how the economy of Nigeria has been performing over time. The contributions of the various sectors to the gross domestic product as at 2017 are, so we shall look at the contribution of the major sectors of the economy as at 2017 to the gross domestic product. Agriculture contributed 21%, 21.6% to the gross domestic product. Industry contributed 18.3%. Services contributed 60.1%. The industry is talking about the manufacturing and the construction industries or companies, and services is talking about all commercial and professional services such as trade, banking, communication, transportation, advertising, warehousing, insurance, tourism, entertainment. All these make up the service industry. So you can see that the service industry is actually growing rapidly and is contributing meaningfully to the gross domestic product. And agriculture, which used to be the main focus, the backbone of the country in the 70s, and so as the contribution of agriculture to the GDP has really fallen, it's now just 21.6% as of 2017. I'm sure it has fallen more, but with the increase in rice production, I think with increase in rice production, I believe by the time estimate is taken, by the time the estimate for the present time is known, I'm sure the contribution of agriculture to GDP would have increased than this. Oil price volatility continues to influence Nigeria's growth since crude oil is the major contributor to the gross domestic product. So fluctuations in the price of crude oil affects the economy of Nigeria seriously. Nigeria's gross domestic product (GDP) usually grow at an average rate of 7% yearly, but following the oil price collapse in the international market that started from 2014, from 2014 there has been serious fluctuation in price of crude oil. The price of crude oil in the international market has been falling, and this has really affected the economy, such that the gross domestic product rate, that is the rate at which the GDP grows, has dropped to 2.7% in 2015. In 2016, during its first recession in 25 years, the economy contracted by 1.6%. So it means as at 2016, the growth of GDP is around 1.1%. Growth for first quarter 2019 is at 2.01%. So as at first quarter of 2019, the growth of GDP is at 2.01%. That is, the rate at which the GDP has been growing is 2.1% from 2.38% in fourth quarter in 2018. So it means that in 2016 the growth rate dropped by 1.6%. So in 2017, between 2016 and 2018, it rose again to 2.38%. So there was an improvement in the GDP as at between 2017 and 2018. But this growth was distorted in 2019. As at first quarter 2019, the growth rate dropped again to 2.01%. And the growth that was actually recorded in the gross domestic product was mainly in the service sector, the transportation sector, the information and communication sector, and a little improvement in oil sector. Agriculture was hurt by sporadic flooding and by conflicts between herdsmen and local farmers. The contribution of agriculture to the gross domestic products is not so significant. It's about 2%. To exports. The contribution of agriculture to total exports has not been significant. It's just like 2% to total exports. And this is as a result of the fact that agriculture has been neglected and attention has been focused to oil. And the conflict between herdsmen and local farmers has actually contributed to the problems facing the agricultural sector. So, unlike the service sector, whose contribution increased to the GDP, agriculture contribution to the GDP has not been as it used to be in the past. In the 70s, agriculture used to be the major contributor. In the 70s, agriculture used to be the major contributor to the gross domestic product. But now, its contribution is below 22% as at 2017. Manufacturing continues to suffer from a lack of finance. When you look at the contribution of the industry also to the GDP, you can see that it's below that of service. And the result for this is that the manufacturing sector or industry is faced with a serious problem of lack of finance and power supply, problem of poor power supply. Final household consumption was the key driver of growth in the GDP in 2019, reinforcing its 1.1% contribution to real GDP growth in 2018. So the manufacturing sector grew a bit. The manufacturing sector is improving. It's improving and its contribution to gross domestic product is increasing. In 2018, it was 1.1%, and in 2019, the growth increased. So manufacturing sector is coming up, and the what is accountable for the growth is increase in consumption of final household. Increase in household final consumption rather, excuse me. Increase in household final consumption. The efforts to lower inflation rates to one figure has faced serious constraints, structural and macroeconomic constraints. Policies and the structure of the economy has made it difficult for us to reduce our inflation rates to a one figure or a one digit. Inflation rate as at 2019 still stood at 11.3%, despite the fact that the Nigerian border has been closed, such that smuggling of goods or importation of goods can be controlled. Yet, price of foodstuffs, food prices continues to increase in the country, and this has made it very difficult to control the inflation rate. Food prices is increasing, and this has made it difficult to control the inflation rate. In fact, the inflation rate is estimated at 13.4% for 2020, which means an increase of about 2.1% in the inflation rate in 2020. The COVID-19 outbreak and collapse in international crude prices. Yes, the prices of crude oil is falling drastically in the international market, as the demand for crude oil is falling below supply due to the current COVID-19 pandemic facing the whole world. This is set to push the economy back into recession this year with an estimated minus 3.4% growth rate. So we estimate that the growth rate of the economy will fall by 3.4%. Job losses and lower remittances are poised to hit private consumption hard. So many people in the private sector have lost their jobs to the pandemic, and even money that Nigerians abroad are sending into the country, which we refer to as remittances, is reducing, and this is actually affecting private consumption of goods and services, while investment activity also suffers as there are delays to project executions and uncertainty. The oil price shock blow to the country's foreign exchange earnings and fiscal revenues are major risk ahead. So with the fall in price of oil and fall in demand for crude oil in the world, definitely foreign exchange earnings is going to be affected, as crude oil is the major contributor to the gross domestic product of Nigeria. So we are going to be facing fall in the foreign exchange earnings and of fiscal revenues, as our fiscal revenues is just 7% of GDP, which means total revenue accruing to the government from taxes, from dues, from fines, from royalties is just 7% of the gross domestic product. Increased public spending widened the deficit. So it means that if only 7% of the gross domestic product is our fiscal revenue, and then it means there's going to be deficit budgets, and this deficit is usually financed by borrowing. So as at June 2019, total public debt was $83.9 billion. That is 40.6% higher than the year before it. Our public debt is increasing. It has increased with over 14% from what it was in 2018. And that debt represents over 20% of our GDP. That debt represents over 20% of our GDP. Initially, it used to be 17.5% of our GDP in 2018, but it has increased and is now about 20% of our GDP. Domestic public debt amounted to $56.7 billion, while external public debt amounts to $27.2 billion as at 2018. Poverty remains widespread. The poverty rate in the country in over half of the country's 36 states is above the national average of 69%. And the population of the country living below poverty line is above 40%. Poverty reflects rising unemployment, estimated at 23.1%. The unemployment rate of the country is 23.1% as at 2017. So as of 2018, the unemployment rate is 23.1%. In 2016, the unemployment rate used to be 14.2%. Low skills limit opportunities for employment in the formal economy. That is, people lack the necessary skills to make them employable. And that's why the unemployment rate is rising. Government social programs such as Empower and other youth empowerment schemes are meant to address unemployment in the country. There are so many efforts put in place by the government to reduce unemployment rates in the country. But yet, the unemployment rate is still very high. So this is where we are going to stop today. Inshallah, we shall continue at the next class. Thank you.